Hey guys, today I wanted to talk about the pros and cons of having a larger home. Now, before buying this house, I was mostly in the camp of bigger is better. But after living here for a year, there's things that I've noticed that are not quite ideal for everyone. I wanted to share in case they're helpful the next time you or your family are searching for a home, whether it's renting or buying. So one pro of having a bigger house is that typically they come with more storage. But I will say it's not always in a logical location or where you need it. So take this house for example. We have very generously sized closets. We've got a lot of good cabinet space. Our kitchen is huge and our bathrooms tend to have a lot of good storage, but nowhere in this house is a coat closet. And we've got a big coat rack in our foyer and that's functional for us, but for people that really like a coat closet, that could be a huge issue. And we've actually thought about putting in like an armoire or something closer to our garage just so that we can have some of that quick hanging storage space near the door. Now what is nice about the larger house though is even though the built-in storage is not exactly where we want it, it's really easy to add larger pieces of storage furniture in the areas that you want them. So for example, we have a lot of toys that need to be stored. And so we've added 2 different buffets, one in our dining area and one in our foyer. The dining room one in our last house was used for more like serving related stuff, but now that our kitchen is so large, we don't need that piece of furniture for those items, so we use it for toys instead and it works great. The floor plan and the floor space allows us to get more creative with those storage solutions where we do need them. So a con of having a lot of storage space though is it's easy to grow into your space. Have you ever heard of that phrase, like a fish is gonna grow to the size of its tank? I think that happens with humans and our stuff. So if you have a lot of closets, if you have a lot of cabinets, if you have a lot of these storage spaces, you're going to naturally want to fill them. I don't know what it is, but it happens. It's happened to me in every house I've had. So in previous homes, especially when we lived in apartments, if we were buying something on Amazon, we did have to think through where is this gonna live? Whereas in this house, I'm like, figure it out. Like there's a spot somewhere. And that is not a healthy mindset to have, especially if you're trying to cut down on the clutter in your home. It's really easy to have it creep up on you in a larger house, easier, I think, than in a smaller house. So another pro is that big houses let you sprawl out, especially in a post-2020 world where a lot of us work from home, at least if you're lucky enough to have a job that allows it. It's nice to have separated spaces for not only you to work away from your significant other or whoever else you live with, but also to have workspaces that are separate from your fun or more general life spaces. I know for me at least, it's nice at the end of the workday to be able to leave my office and feel like I'm truly leaving my work in that room and not having to go back to it until the next day. Also, if you're not the only adult working from home, it's really nice to have some separation so that you're not getting each other's noise all the time. So for example, my husband and I both take a lot of conference calls, and so it's nice to not have to listen to his while I'm trying to concentrate on mine. It means I'm not always having to wear headphones the entire day. Now, one con is that there's just not as much of that forced closeness. Now, I think for a lot of people that have not had the luxury of a larger space, maybe you're like, girl, give me the larger space, I do not care. Sometimes I look back fondly at our apartment life in Chicago where my husband and I were just married and it was us and our cats and we were all just always within a 6 feet space of each other in the evenings when we were hanging out. Long term, maybe that's too close for a lot of people, but I just noticed that even when I'm cooking in the kitchen and talking to him while he's sitting on the couch doing something, we're just physically so much further apart. And so we have to make more of a conscious effort to really just sit next to each other and things like that because it's a larger space. It's just something that I feel like you end up being more conscious of in a larger house than you do in a smaller house. This one's a little vain, but I'm gonna be totally honest. I love when people walk into our house and are wowed by what they see. And don't get me wrong, our finishes are not the fanciest, but I think our vaulted ceiling definitely makes an impression. And I think the sheer size of our living space does as well. We have other weird things that are kind of cool, like our super wide hallways. Our movers were fascinated by how wide our hallways were. They were like,
we could play football in here. You have fit a couch in this hallway.
And they're not wrong. And you end up taking some pride in it. And I don't know. I mean, again, it's not something that you couldn't get with like really cool things in a smaller house, but it's one thing I just love about this particular home. I also just love that I can host like a 50-person event here and like indoors and not have it feel cramped. And I've done it. I've done it for a work event, and I've also done it for our daughter's birthday. I thought we were gonna feel on top of each other, and we just didn't. That makes me feel so good because I really do love hosting, and I like knowing that I can be the gathering place for a lot of people. So a con of this though is that, and maybe it's not even a real con, but realistically, we don't host enough for me to justify a home purchase based on our ability to host people. We bought this house because the layout made a lot of sense for us. Even if this house was shrunken by say 500 to 1,000 square feet, it would make sense for us based on where the space is allocated. You don't have to have that space to make a house worth buying unless you are someone that regularly hosts like 50 to 100 person events, in which case like good for you, buy a mansion. So another pro is that big spaces are generally more convenient. So even though a small space can feel super cozy and cute and nice, you just have more room for activities in a larger house. So we have this very unnecessary large space off of our kitchen that I could literally probably put a 8x10 rug and it would fit. And it's not practical, but does my daughter play there all the time? Absolutely. Does she play with this giant pop-up bus that my sister got her there? Absolutely she does. Or we bring out our nugget couch and things like that, and it's not a problem. Now the con of this, and again, maybe not like a con, but just being realistic, that space is not necessary. Like that space near our kitchen is kind of wasted most of the time. I actually would love to extend our island one day and put in a second dishwasher because y'all, I love a dishwasher. Like sometimes I look at it and I'm like, I'm not using this particular space, but at least I use all of the rooms in our house really every day, except maybe our bonus room above our garage. And so at least there, I do feel like I'm making good use of the space in our house, even if it's not every inch of every room. Calvin wants to say hi. So we have long hair cats, as you can see here. I feel like he was necessary for this shot. In our apartments, we were vacuuming constantly. I mean, my poor husband probably vacuumed every day because they just shed all the time. When your house is bigger, you notice it less because the hair gets more spread out throughout the space. Now, don't get me wrong, there's times where I enter a hallway and it looks like fur tumbleweeds everywhere because there was a cat fight there, but that's generally not the case. We have like little pockets where things get a little hairy, like one spot on our couch, but for the most part, it gets spread out throughout the house. The downside though is just because you can't see all the pet hair doesn't mean it's not there. So you do have to be really mindful of making sure the entire house gets cleaned. So where having a house cleaner is great, and I'll plug my video up here on the top right. But again, if you're cleaning yourself, you have to make sure that you're still vacuuming and being as diligent as you were in that smaller space in your larger space. Just may mean you can go slightly longer in between those deep cleans. You just don't want to end up in a situation where your friend that's allergic to your pet can't come to your house because it may look clean, but all of that pet hair is still there. So overall, would I buy this house again? Absolutely, but not for the size. I would do it for the layout. So because this is a ranch and everything except one bedroom is on the first floor, it makes it so easy to just live my life. If tomorrow I had to get a smaller house, if there was a ranch house available that was like 1,000 square feet smaller, I would probably still be thrilled to live in it. It's still my dream to do a custom build house one day. Getting less and less likely because I'm genuinely just so happy here. But I think if I was to do a custom build, I would be really conscious about the size and not making it larger than it needs to be, but making sure I have spaces that are appropriately sized for really what we're gonna need in the long run. Now, if you're curious how we even came about finding this house, I'll link that video here. It was a little bit of a weird impulse buy, but I have no regrets, and I'll share that here if you're interested. Thanks, and I'll see you next time.